Hello, and welcome to Design Alpha. Today I'll be going over the basics on how to use SketchUp Pro by showcasing the fundamental tools that you'll most often use. This video acts as an introduction to a much more in-depth series I plan to make that will go through more complex SketchUp tutorials as well as how to use the program in conjunction with other rendering software. If this sounds interesting to you, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into the tutorial. So before I go through the way I'll work through this is I'm going to go through the tools most likely left to right. However, before I start with any of the ones at the top here, I want to touch on these two, which is the hand over here and this little arrow spin kind of tool here. The right is referred to as pan. Now when I click on this little hand pops up, and it's, as you could probably imagine, if I hold and move across my screen, it allows me to move my screen so I can see the model into different places. Now this is only good for moving in one static position because I have no way to turn around, and that's where orbit comes into play. This allows me to grab onto my screen holding my mouse with the left mouse button and turning it around so I can see my model in completely 360 degrees. Now, a quick tip about the orbit tool is actually if your mouse, the scroll wheel, if it has a button underneath it, you can actually use that button on the scroll wheel as the orbit tool. That's usually its default key. So those are the two main movement tools that are out of the way. Now moving left to right with all the main tools in the program. So we start off with this arrow, which is the select tool. This is pretty straightforward. It allows you to click on anything within your model to make any changes to it. This allows you to scale it, move it, do anything you want really. Delete it, anything you like. If you want to select multiple things using the select tool, I was simply just clicking just then, click in, click out, and when you select it, it will highlight blue like this. However, if you want to select multiple things, simply grab whatever is inside your boundary, holding the left mouse button and selecting anything within that boundary, and it will all be selected and shown blue like that. There is also the lasso tool, which is just like the select tool, just more freehand. So it allows you to do things like this and select certain things that are within that lasso. However, it's not particularly useful, I would say. The normal select tool, just doing something like this, I use most of the time. However, it's there if you would like. It's actually part of I believe, one of the newest updates in SketchUp Pro. Next up, we have the eraser. Pretty self-explanatory. If I was to use this as an example, and I'll get to these tools in just a second, the eraser allows you to delete parts of your model. Now, the eraser only deletes lines opposed to faces. So if I go like this line here has disappeared, which opens up this box here. Same with here, and so on. If you want to delete two lines at once, recommend going to the corner, hitting it like that, and you see they both get highlighted blue just like that, and then they disappear. Now, this is for deleting lines. However, if you want to delete faces, you would go back to the select tool, select the face you want to delete, then go on your keyboard and press the DEL key for delete. The other thing you could do with the eraser is to hold down the shift key to delete multiple things. So an example of that would be, if I get, it doesn't really matter, I can keep the box there. If I have multiple lines, for example, multiple lines just like this, doesn't really matter how they're matched up. If you grab the eraser tool, you can decide to, if I want to delete all these lines, you can choose to do it one by one like this, or a much more effective method is to hold down the shift key, doesn't matter left or right on your keyboard, and holding down the eraser tool, you'll see that little icon has popped up next to it. Drag it over anything you want to delete, and you'll notice it all highlights blue, meaning it will all delete in one go, and then you can release the Shift key. Moving on to the line tool. This is, as you just saw me use there, probably the most fundamental tool to SketchUp, as it allows you to model anything that you desire. Any shape, any object, all you have to do is create this 2D plan like this. Make sure you connect it to the endpoint. You'll see a highlight there. And this is a good example of showing because you always want to check your perspective, because it will only turn into a 3D object if it's flat. So if I do this again and make sure that my surface is going to be flat, you'll see there, it turns white. This indicates that it is a completely flat surface that you can now manipulate. You'll notice that a 2D flat plane like this actually has two sides. You have the white side like this, and underneath a more grayish kind of blue side. Now, you always want to be modeling with the white side, because as soon as you turn over to the underside and start modeling with this, if I bring this down and I start modeling with that like that, sometimes it can be okay, but there is a chance that it can cause issues later down the track. So you always want to be modeling white side up. And if you have your side facing gray and you want to know how to switch it, simply right click on the face, go to this part here, which says reverse faces, click on that, and then I'll switch it over just like that. So make sure it's always white. All right. And under the line tool, just like the select tool, is also the freehand drawing tool. Now, as I said with the select tool, it's a feature that's there, not a feature I would use very often. And as you can see, it doesn't create very smooth lines. It can be very jagged. If you had a straight enough hand, perhaps you could get it to be smooth enough to create a surface that you'd be happy with. However, there are much more effective tools that you could use to achieve such objects. Moving on to the arc tools, clean up space a bit. Over here we have the arc tools, and this comes into 4 separate parts. There is the arc tool, the basic arc tool, which is like a regular 1 point. You have the 2-point arc tool, 3 points, and then pi. The 2 ones I mainly use, and that I've seen most designers, architects use, is arc and 2-point arc. So it is simple as you can do this on multiple faces, which I'll show in just a second. You simply want to grab any surface, it doesn't have to be there, it could be here, extend it to a certain distance you're happy with, click with your left mouse button, and then start dragging to wherever point you want, and release. Click again, and it will create a curved line like that. So I'll do that again. So click once to start the center point, click a second time to start where your arc is going to be, and then you don't have to hold it down, you just click it. I'm letting go of my mouse right now, and then click one more time to finish the arc. Now, if you zoom in really closely, it wasn't that much of a problem for this one. You can see it a little bit. It's really jagged. This isn't a very smooth curve. Now, what you want to do to get around that is, if I go back to the arc tool and do it again, and let's say it's a really big one, and you can see all the different jagged pieces within that, you want to go to your control key, hold it down, and go to the plus icon, and keep hitting that. And you can see that the line is getting more and more smooth. And you don't want to hit it too many times, but enough so that the line looks like it is a smooth surface and that it would be passed under a naked eye. And then you can just release it and just click as normal. And as you can see, the line is much more smooth than it was before. Now, you don't want to click the plus sign too much, because there is a chance that you will get a warning sign saying it will be something along the lines of too many polygons calculated. And basically what this means is that the computer can't handle how many times you have segmented this curved line, because that's what adding these plus signs is. You're basically adding more of these jagged lines, but when you zoom out, it looks smoother. So you want to find that sweet spot between not too less so that it looks like a blocky mess, and too much so that your computer can't handle it. Then same thing, I'll quickly briefly show with the 2-point is pretty much the same. The 2-point is slightly different because it is more used for arcs rather than like a curved line. So you want to start off with the point, just like the last one. Left is where you want your left side boundary to be, right side boundary, and then move it up or down depending on where you want it to be. And just like last time, if it's really blocky and jagged like this, Control plus 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 plus, keep going until it's curved. Now, one thing I did not mention before is that you don't always have to be using the arc on a flat plane like this. You can bring down your camera and you can see the icon has changed from blue to green, and that indicates a new plane that the arc is drawing off of. So now if I was to do it again, it is now facing vertical opposed to flat as it was before. And if I wanted to, for example, connect these lines to make it a solid object, I can do that quite easily like that. Moving on to shapes, which are located in this panel here. Now, the 4 main shapes that SketchUp comes with is the rectangle, a rotated rectangle, a circle, and a polygon. I mainly have used the rectangle and the circle. Very rarely I'll use a polygon. I don't think I've ever really had to use the rotated rectangle before, but with all of them it's quite simple. So obviously you could, if you wanted to, have to draw up a rectangle like this by line. However, a much quicker, easier way is to simply use the rectangle tool. So you want to click either, doesn't really matter which corner you do, but once you click it first, the first time you click it, it will be one of the corners of the rectangle, and you'll see SketchUp is already predicting and telling you what the rectangle will look like. And now if you look at the bottom right hand corner of the screen, it'll show you dimensions where you can actually type in if you wanted it to be, you can click it normally like that, or if you want to make it more accurate, you can make it something, any dimension you want. So for example, 1000, and then comma 5000, enter, and it has calculated what those dimensions would look like. And you can do that typing in with pretty much any of the tools. It's just, I'll do it again with the line tool, for example. If you wanted to measure a line to be a specific length, it's probably not the best to do it on the red line there, but if you were to do it here, you can see as I'm moving it, if you look at the bottom right hand corner, the length is moving up and down in millimeters. All you have to do is, it's best to, I recommend getting a keyboard with a numpad on it, which is extremely useful for any design work, because you can just simply type in really easily 500, enter, and it shows you right there, that's 500 millimeters measured correctly. You don't necessarily need a numpad. You can use the numbers right above a normal keyboard if you have a 60% keyboard, for example. However, yeah, I just find it easier with a numpad. And that typing in is also very useful for the circle tool, which normally you could just click once to get the epicenter of the circle, the very center, bring it out to whatever you want, and click again to release. And as you can see again, there's that jaggedness. So if you want to do it again, Control plus plus plus, much smoother. You can go on for quite a long time. You can make it even smoother and smoother. With the circle tool, you have to go Control plus quite a lot because you want to get it. It uses a lot more jagged surfaces, a lot more polygons, a lot more of these lines than like an arc does, for example. But once again, you want to find that sweet spot between. And as I was saying with the circle, if you wanted to hit the middle and you see the bottom right hand, instead of it being the length of something, this time it's asking for the radius. So you can see with that red line there, it's already measuring the radius. The more I move it out, the less I move it out. And as you would know with basic maths, radius is the distance between the center of the circle to the outside. If you wanted the diameter, it'd be the radius times 2. So that's the distance between one side of the circle to the other. So if I was to type in 1000, that means that the distance between that center point there and the outside is 1000 millimeters, 1 meter, and the distance between the right and the left is a total of 2000. Pretty straightforward. Now moving on to the push-pull. Once again, a very common and very useful tool in SketchUp. The push-pull allows you to take any 2D surface, such as anything I'm making right now, and turn them all into 3D objects by either pushing them or pulling them. So it is as simple as clicking the icon, hovering over a surface to where you see it highlights like that with all those little blue dots, then clicking it, holding down your left mouse button, and dragging it up or down to wherever you wish. And I don't know why that's into two different parts there, but it doesn't really matter. Another thing just like with all the other tools, you can type in how far you want that level to be. Now, if it ever stops like this is a really good example. If ever it says whatever I just said there, offset limited to whatever number it is, you simply want to press Control, and then you'll see this little plus icon added next to that push-pull, and then you're allowed to keep dragging further. That is a very common annoyance in SketchUp, is that getting stuck on that offset, but pressing that Control allows you to continue going. I would recommend though hitting the Control again to get rid of it, because if you keep that plus sign next to the push-pull, it can cause some issues later down the track. And for example, as the more you push-pull, the more you'll have different surfaces pop up, like this new surface here. Now, as I said, push-pull is good for creating 3D objects, but it's also good for erasing separate parts. You can almost use it like a cutting object, because if I hold on to this and drag it all the way here, you'll see it once again hits this offset. However, if I let go of my mouse now, it completely shaves that part off, and now you have a smooth surface. And you can do this almost indefinitely. So see that is to do with that control issue. Sometimes you'll have objects like this which have these weird abnormalities with them. If that ever happens, I recommend just remodeling whatever you were just trying to do, and then it should work perfectly fine. But yeah, you can use it to delete parts, extend parts. It's one of the most versatile tools. Drag it down, drag it up. The sky's the limit, really. And that brings us to next, the offset tool. So clear up the space one more time. The offset tool allows us to, as the name implies, offset different shapes. Hit the offset tool, and then you want to click on that where it says on edge, and that allows you, I'm not holding this down, I've just clicked it once, and now I can bring it either in or outwards to offset that object. So if I stop it right here, that is now an entirely new surface, as you can see right here. And now I can bring these up into different places, and you can do this almost indefinitely. So you don't necessarily have to hit the edge you don't necessarily have to select all the edges. You can simply click on the edge itself or on the surface and it'll automatically pick up on it. But this is just an example of the different ways you can use the offset tool, and you can create some objects like this where you have little cutouts, or like a pillar, for example. It's once again a very useful tool. Then we have the move tool. Now, once again, a very straightforward example, a very straightforward tool. If I have a block and I want to, the thing about moving an object is that if I was simply to grab this point here and start holding down my left mouse button, as you can see, it's dragging that entire line. Now that may be what you're going for, but it most likely isn't, and it can get really frustrating if you don't know how to drag the entire object. Now to do that, you want to go back to your select tool, holding down the left shift key, highlighting the entire object that you want to move, and then going to the move tool, grabbing wherever, it doesn't really matter, holding down your left mouse button, and then you are free to move your object wherever you please. I believe it can also be used to move different points into different directions like that, but as you can see, it can have its flaws sometimes. And you can also drag and pull different surfaces like this, which is different to the push-pull, because the push-pull will only move surfaces in straight lines. However, the move tool will drag all the other lines with it. Next up is the rotate tool. Now with the rotate tool, it's pretty straightforward. You want to, so it mainly works if you're using, I mainly use it if I'm using it for 2D faces just like this. When I highlight it, just as I've said before with all the other examples, click on it, and you want to take a point that whatever point you want it to be, can be the center, can be the edge here, click it once. So that's the point it's gonna start taking from. And then the next time you hit it, that's gonna be the point of rotation. So if you click it there, and now I'm not holding anything down, I'm just moving my mouse, it will start rotating it, and it'll give you a preview of what it's gonna look like until you find wherever you want it to be, hit the left mouse button again, and that will set its new position. If I also do that again in the center, for example, you can do it just like that as well, if you want the center of your object to be the point of rotation, for example. That's quite straightforward as well. Now, the other tool we got is the scale tool. This is really useful for, well, obviously scaling an object, but I find it quite useful because it allows you to achieve some pretty interesting designs. What I mean by this is, if I had a block, and the scale tool you can use either to change the entire object or just individual pieces. So an example of the latter would be hitting the icon and hovering over, like you can see it highlights the face here, and then click on it, and you'll see all these boundaries pop up. Now this allows you to skew it in any direction you want, left, right, up, down. If you want to taper an object, you would highlight this one face here, holding the shift key, my mistake, I believe it's the control key, yep, the control key, it's going to taper it just like that, and it should keep it all within the same proportions as well, yep. Just like so. The shift key allows you to move it in whatever ratio you want. Without the shift key, it will stay within that one ratio. And that's with one face. However, with the entire object, with a 3D object, if I grab the scale key again, highlight the entire object, then grab the scale key, it allows for much more flexibility within the 3D object, because you can move scale simply by grabbing the corner. You can move it on an angle like that, or if you wanted to grab the entire object, like if you wanted to make it the whole object larger, holding down the shift key scales up the entire object just like that. And you see in the bottom right hand corner, it shows you what scale it is. So if this is 1:1, as you can see, it says 1, and this would be here, that is 2 times the size, as you can see in the bottom right hand corner. However, I believe you have to first letting go of the left mouse button and then letting go of the shift key, because if you keep moving it and then let go of the shift key, it's going to go into this weird warping stage. Now moving on to the tape measure tool, which is this yellow icon here. Now this is very useful for obviously measuring the diameters of your object. So It is as simple as you want to lock on to a specific point of your model, clicking it once, and then wherever you move that tape measure, as you can see in the bottom right hand corner, it's going to start giving you the dimension you want. So I can either stop this if I want the midpoint, it tells me it's going to be, and you don't want to click it yet, so I still have only clicked it once, because once you click it again, it's going to disappear. So if I just leave it there, so if I hold it right there, it's going to tell me it's 1607 millimeters. And then I can bring it further back or further forward. Now, as you could just see that I just did with accidentally, but is very much another part of the tool, is the fact that it can create these guidelines here. So these guidelines are very useful for trying to lock on different parts of your model. So it's as simple as if I wanted to create a guideline going this way, you would want to find a part on your model that has a similar angled line to it. Don't want to click on the midpoint, but click on anywhere else where it says on edge, and you can either double click it to get a line on the line that you've already selected, or click it once and then start dragging it to wherever you want. And this is where you can start making grids, for example, and you can click it on the actual lines themselves, and then go to your drawing tool or any other tool you desire and highlight to where that little X pops up and it says intersection. Then you want to click on that, and this allows you to precisely get a shape based on measurements, little guidelines that you can prepare beforehand. Next up is the text tool, which is very rarely used, but another option that's there. And it's a simple, really simple, just click it, click anywhere on your model once, and it can be used to either grab dimensions like this, which pop up like that, and you can leave it in your model and it will just stay there as you move the camera around, or you can just click it and place it anywhere you want and then type anything you want, and then if you click out of it just like that, you'll have this text floating in your model. Now you may want this if you want to label different parts of your model. You can see you can add like little arrows and then, show dimensions, or if you want to like label rooms in a house, for example, you can use the text tool. I mostly use something else, but it is a tool that is there. And the good thing is that it is part of the model. So when you're moving your camera around, opposed to a 2D software where it can only be used in one view, this text stays where it is, and it's always facing the camera as well, which is useful. Then we have the paint bucket tool. Another quick tip is if you want to highlight certain areas of a model, if you only want to highlight one area, you would highlight a box going left to right like that. However, if you want to highlight the whole area, you want to drag your mouse right to left like this. It does make a difference because left to right only highlights what's in the box. However, right to left highlights anything that the box touches. So you see, even though I'm not highlighting the entire lines here, I'm just touching them and it still counts it. So the paint bucket tool, I should have actually kept the block there, but basically it allows you to add textures, colors, images, basically surfaces to a white 2D plane. So you see these are just some basic SketchUp materials. Click on one of those materials, it will automatically bring up the paint bucket tool anyway, and then you can just freely click on any surface you want and texture all of it. And I'll probably go into more tutorials and details about changing scales of textures and everything to do with that another time. And besides the orbit and hand tool, which we've already touched on, then you have these two zoom tools here, which obviously if you click on the magnifying glass for the first zoom and just hold it down, As you could imagine, it zooms in and out of your screen, and if you use this in conjunction with the orbit tool, as I said, bound to your mouse, you can get some good angles of your model. Or if you want to get a quick view of your entire model zoomed up to its extents, you click the Zoom Extents tool, and it just brings it right to where the boundary of the model is to the boundary of your viewport. And that is going to do it for all of the basic tools found in SketchUp. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, consider liking it and subscribing to my channel for more design-related tutorials posted regularly. Stick around for more exciting features coming soon to Design Alpha.